Sarah Kennedy will introduce the first of a new discussion series, Daytime, and that's after the break.
$10.95. I don't have enough. I'll put something back.
We'll put back this and take bowl 3 instead.
Automatic powder plus fabric conditioner?
Yes, it's great value.
I don't want to save money if it doesn't work.
Bowl 3 does work beautifully.
You don't have to spend money on separate powder and fabric conditioner. Bowl 3 does it all in one.
Bowl 3 really does work. Look at these shorts, marvellously clean. And my towels are soft and so fresh. I won't be buying separate powder and conditioner again when Bowl 3 does it all in one.
Chow mein. Somehow it couldn't have been thought of anywhere else. Oriental, mysterious, exciting, imaginative. That's the extra you get in a Vesta chow mein. Originality and imagination, as well as soft noodles and beef, red peppers, beans, soy sauce, and crispy noodles. That's why when you give them a Vesta meal, you give them something extra, but you don't pay extra for it.
Ah, mortgage, Roman.
Loft extension.
Rising tap in the barbecue.
Kruger Am.
Mustn't grumble.
Have you ever noticed, Rita, the world is divided between us woodpecker drinkers and them?
Them?
Dodos, Rita.
Where did the A23 Basingstoke?
Why don't they drink Woodpecker Cider, Dennis?
Taste buds extinct. Can't appreciate the subtle yet sparkling, light yet profound taste of your woodpecker cider. Cheers, mate.
Double glazing.
See what I mean, Rita? Woodpecker cider, not for dodos.
The first time ever I saw your face, I thought the sun rose in your eyes.
Oil of Ulay can help you stay young-looking too.
Domestos is twice as thick as ordinary thick bleaches, and it goes on working even after flushing. We clean 2 toilets, flush them both, and added blue dye. Unlike the ordinary bleach, thick Domestos still had the power to bleach the dye. Clear proof, Domestos resists the flush and goes on working, cleaning the bowl and killing the germs. Dead, even after the flush.
What are you doing?
Nothing.
Doesn't look like nothing. Here, you're not eating your last Rolo.
No, I was gift wrapping it.
Huh?
For you.
Oh, you have turned over a new leaf.
Do you love anyone enough to give them your last Rolo?
You tell us how much you like the Alpen taste, but couldn't we make it cheaper? Well, we could cut down on our fruit, not go such a bundle. Our wheat, lose the odd nut or two, or add to the cheaper ingredients. But we think you'd notice the difference. That's why we keep to the Swiss recipe we prefer. So you keep the Alpen taste you prefer. Alpen. It's not the tastiest muesli for nothing.
At 3 o'clock this afternoon, we're off to Scotland for the first episode in a new series of Take the High Road. And there's another new series now on Yorkshire Television as Sarah Kennedy leads the discussion with the studio audience and her guests in Daytime.
Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you at home and, of course, to our studio audience. They're not absolutely certain about it, but they're going to do most of the work, I trust. Well, this is the very first daytime show. We're here at 2:30 every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. And in the half hour, we'll be covering, well, the main talking point of the day. It could be Princess Diana's baby or what it's really like to be a millionaire. We'll also be looking, of course, at the heavier issues which eventually affect all of us, our health, our salaries, our future. But we're really trying to do it in a way that, well, I call chat-overable, like you might discuss something in the news with a friend. Let me first of all, though, show you around. This screen over here links us in the studio with Daytime's roving reporter, Khalid Aziz. And he'll always be, hopefully, where it matters. I last saw Khalid 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon with a pair of mountain boots and a map, so let's find out whether he got to where he was intending to. Did you, Khalid? And are you doing the potatoes, dear?
Just about, yes, Sarah. I've ended up in a corner of a far-flung foreign potato field deep in the heart of Yorkshire, just a few miles from Sheffield. You know, Yorkshire's a county famous for all kinds of things, you know, cricket, puddings, but I suppose these days, uppermost in most people's minds are one thing that Yorkshire's famous for. It's collieries, like this one just behind me here, because this is very much Arthur Scargill country.
You haven't even mentioned Jeff Boycott.
No, well, I mentioned cricket, but I didn't know whether that was a good thing to mention or not, really. He's still playing.
All right, Khalid, I'll come back to you a bit later on in the programme. Well, let's move on now to the subject of the programme today, and it's something of a rarity. I mean, you might have spotted that today our studio is filled with women, so let's hear from a few of them, and no doubt you'll very soon guess the topic.
We're fighting to save our jobs, our pits and our communities and the very future of all our children.
I believe this strike has been deliberately engineered by Mr. Scargill to bring down the government and this nation and everything this country has ever stood for.
10 days ago, my husband decided to go back to work. We had weighed every aspect to. We knew we should get intimidation, and we have got it. Bricks thrown, obscene phone calls, and the last thing was the mail interfered with, and I think that's a pretty poor do.
3 statements, all talking about the same thing, but all tinged with passion and, as you saw there, some real unhappiness. And we've just heard the latest peace moves, which emerged at the TUC at Brighton, have collapsed. The miners' strike goes on. And during the last 6 months, you don't need me to tell you, we've witnessed some of the most bitter strike that we've ever seen in Britain. Miner set against miner. Well, with us today on the daytime programme are the wives of those miners. Some of their men are working, some have taken the decision to return to work, and some are still on strike. Ladies, welcome. You've come from well, a long way, haven't you? Kent, Barnsley, Chesterfield, Bolsover, Sheffield, South Wales and North Wales, Yorkshire and the Midlands. Have I missed anybody out? No? Notts. I didn't mention Notts. I didn't think I was efficient as that. Now, the 2 in the hot seat here, well, I'll let them introduce themselves, both with very differing opinions. Let's start with you.
I'm Betty Heathfield. I'm a member of the Derbyshire Women's Action Group, and Derbyshire has over 30 women's action groups all over the coalfield who support the strike and have been collecting money and providing food for our very hungry families, 10,500 of them on strike in Derbyshire.
Betty Heathfield, thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Jane Fjellberg. I'm the chairperson of the Miners' Wives Back to Work campaign. We organised ourselves as a Back to Work campaign simply because we knew that the vast majority of miners were very put out with this revolutionary strike that is just hell-bent on committing suicide to our very industries and livelihoods.
Right, let's start. Betty Heathfield, you're wife of the General Secretary, Peter Heathfield, of course. Are you surprised that the peace talks have failed?
I've only just heard that the peace talks have failed, and I hadn't really known exactly what the peace talks were.
The NUM accused the Coal Board of duplicity. That's what I know so far.
Yes, well, all I'm concerned is that peace talks will succeed when there is a recognition of the sincerity of our fight to save our pits and our jobs and our communities, and that over 80% of the miners are on strike for this very thing, and the wives are supporting them. Thousands of us have joined in together to help our husbands because we believe in this fight.
Let's get on to that a little later on, Betty. Thank you. Are you surprised, Jane, that the peace talks have foundered?
Not at all. Not at all.
Why?
Quite honestly, I can't see any peace talks coming anywhere near fruition if we're only going to argue about beneficial and economic.
Why are we so divided?
Basically because there wasn't a ballot allowed in the first place. The membership of the NUM were not consulted as to what their wishes were. They were just brought out and they're left out.
If there had been a ballot, would there have been a 100% strike, do you think?
I very much doubt it, and I believe that's why there wasn't a ballot in the first place.
Let's go to the audience. How many of you would have approved of a national ballot? Would you like to put up your hands? And how many against? Is that about 50-50, both of you? Is that fair? About 50-50? Well, sorry?
I would have said it was probably even Stevens.
Betty, all right then. Why are you so divided? We've heard from Jane. What's your opinion?
I don't think we are so distinctly divided. Over 80% of the miners are on strike and have stayed out on strike solidly for 6 months. So I think that the division is not at all 50-50. I think the division is very much with a minority of people who are not joining in this strike for
Why
their own
wasn't there a
reasons.
ballot, Betty?
Because the constitution of the NUM didn't demand that there should be a ballot.
But the constitution keeps changing, doesn't it?
The
Is that fair?
Everything that has happened since this strike has been very constitutional and in accordance with the rules of the
Well,
NUM.
why does some of the audience disagree? Would somebody like to make a point? Lady in green?
Yes, if I can, because, you know, I object very much to these people calling for a ballot, because let's be honest, the NUNEC, they've already got a mandate on pit closures. They had it in 1982, and that was democratically decided at branch meetings, through to the delegates, then through to the meeting and through to the EC. They were mandated, and what the NUMEC are doing now, and that is why we've now got 80% of the miners now out in support of that mandate. And it's as simple as it. And the only people that are calling for a ballot are those that think that their safety and safe pits, and it's not going to work.
Let's go to the lady now. Thank you for your point. Let's go to the lady in the front row.
We hear a lot of talk about democracy. The NUM has always been famous for its constitution of allowing a ballot, and in Joe Gormley's days that was always allowed. But of course Arthur Scargill has tried unsuccessfully on 2 occasions to have a ballot, and he failed. Now you have to decide, is this a national union or is it a local union? Not one miner is going to lose his job. I don't think any of us have the right to demand jobs for our children. What section of society is entitled to a job for their children?
Thank you. Can I now turn it back to Jane? Jane, is this then a political strike, or is it about coal and the future of the coalfields?
It's definitely a political strike.
What proof have you got?
Well, it's been pretty obvious, has it not, with the riots and the Marxist tendencies, the thuggery, the bully boys. Now, what else but Mr. Scargill's personal political beliefs?
But I'm sure miners are men. Why don't they vote with their feet if they're being manipulated?
The 80% that Betty Heathfield says are out would willingly go back tomorrow if it weren't for the threats, the sincere life threats that hang over them.
Betty?
Well, could I answer that all the threats that these people are under are happening to us as well? We have our windows smashed. We have our windows smashed. We have our cars painted.
By miners who are at work?
Yes, yes.
Who's had that experience then? Would you like to speak about that?
My husband's crossed the picket line, and I found out I married a man and not a mouse. And because he's crossed it and the house has been watched, there's 2 of our cars that had paint stripper on both cars, and it's going to cost over £1,000 of it righted.
Lady over there?
Talking about police brutality, from...
Well, we're not talking about police brutality at the moment. We're talking about intimidation. Can I stick with intimidation?
No, what I want to say is we have a couple in Bolsover that are both... the husband isn't working, and he and his wife, who is pregnant, have been attacked. Both of them have been attacked by miners that are working. So we're having to put up with that sort of thing as well. It isn't just one-sided.
Somebody wanted to make a point up here?
Last night, we had the car broken into, the windows smashed and all the wires ripped out. And my husband has been told that if he goes back to work, then he will be dead. They've painted his locker yellow and welded all his tools up.
I think we'll come back to the intimidation and violence a little later on when we rejoin Khalid. Can I just ask you, and I'd like to actually, if I may, put it to the audience first of all, why did you as women feel that you had to get involved? Let's hear from someone I haven't heard from before. Lady over here.
Well, I've been involved not from the beginning of the strike, from birth, because I was born in a mining area. And just by tradition, we've always had to submit to low wages, bad housing and everything. Now, the youngsters today, they won't do it, thank God. We did it. Unfortunately, we didn't have the backing of men like Arthur Scargill in our town. We had the Joe Gormleys of the world and the Will Lowthers of the world. I go back that far. And I'm proud to say that 55,000 men are on strike in Yorkshire and will stay out on strike despite the scabs.
What? They are not scabs. The working miner is the working man, and it's about time one and all stood up for them. I live in Tamworth in Staffordshire, but the men in our area work in North Warwick, Birch Coppice, Badsley and Door Mill, and they are nearly all working, and Door Mill have never been out.
They've
They
not been
are
given a
95% against the strike. These men in these areas are solid. They are not, I repeat, scabs. They are the epitaph of working men, and it's about time somebody stood up for them.
Epitaph of the working classes.
Can I just ask you, all of you, how many of you are actually frightened now?
Not now. Not
Terrified.
now. My husband's gone to work.
Terrified. Absolutely terrified. I'm secretary of the Miners Back to Work campaign, and I put an advert in the local paper, Miners, if you wish to return to work, phone my number. From that moment, hell just broke out in my home. I can say, if anybody I know violently attacks you, that is wrong, and I would condemn it. But not Mr. Scargill. He condones the bullying by your bully boys, and that is why I have done this. I am fighting for my children, the right for them to walk down the street without the bully boys. I have been threatened with rape. They threatened to kill me. They told my 11-year-old son they were going to kill his mother and father. Didn't put me off. It just made me more determined. Our movement is going to allow the miners of this country to return to work in safety.
Is your husband at work?
Yes, my husband is one of the Kent miners that returned to work yesterday. 2 pits we've now got open in Kent.
We obviously have got to talk about violence right now. So, Betty Heathfield, do you condone violence? Desperate means, desperate measures?
I'm only saying here that all the things that they are saying about violence are happening to us, and nobody is going to pay our bills. The coal board is putting right.
But as a woman, I'm asking you as a woman, do you condone violence, whatever the political issue?
I don't condone violence, but I do not also condone the press and media image of our husbands and sons and fathers as being violent people. We are not violent people.
Let's return now to Khaled Aziz, who's with Mrs. Mary Haywood. Khaled, over to you.
Thanks very much indeed, Sarah. Well, after what's just been said about the press and media bias about how people are presented, let me just leave it to Mrs. Haywood, whose husband Norman went back 10 days ago.
10 days
here
ago.
at Kiverton Park Colliery,
Yes.
which is there in the
Yes.
distance.
Yes.
Now, that must have been a difficult decision for you to take.
Yes, we've been thinking about it for about 20 weeks because we knew we'd been misled by Mr. Scargill and his thugs. And I agree with all the women that have said that he is in fact, I would call him an anarchist. I agree entirely with Mr. McGregor. We have had intimidation, as I've said earlier on, and choose what they do, they could kill us. But we are still going to go to work, and we know that 90% of Kiverton miners want to go to work and are being intimidated.
But you're very aware of this intimidation,
Oh, yes.
aren't you, Mary?
Yes.
Because one of the reasons we've come up here on this hill is that for us to be present down in the village itself, there in the distance, would be difficult. Just tell me the kind of things that have happened to you.
Well, you would have got a crowd of social misfits and paid thugs, paid by Mr. Scargill. And I am a Yorkshire miner's wife. My father was a miner, he's 83-year-old now. I had a grandfather who was down the mine 69 years. And if he'd have lived to see anything like this, he would have been bloody disgusted. Absolutely.
I must say, Mary, I have talked to a handful of people who are on strike down in the village.
Yes.
And they say, look, your husband Norman's just one of 7 people going in there out of a pit of hundreds.
Yes.
Now,
700
they say
odd.
they say that what's the point? You should be being solid with them.
Oh, no, no. We doing what we believe to be right. And if they just look at the TUC conference yesterday, where Mr. Arthur Scargill was appeased with a white feather just to keep the TUC afloat, because it would have just broken up. And I will say this, here and now, to all the rank and file members of the unions that were represented yesterday, go back to work, because take no notice of Arthur Scargill, it is purely political. And his main intention was to bring down Mrs. Thatcher's government.
I suppose one of the ironies must be for you personally is that had the strike not happened, your husband, Norman, would have retired by now, wouldn't he?
Not necessarily. It is left to the management of the pit to see if these men are still wanted. He would have preferred to, but now, you know, if they want to keep him, he is willing to stay.
What's life going to be like for you? Because eventually this strike will, we hope, be over. What's life going to be like for you back down there in Kiverton?
We have heard rumours and people have said we don't want to speak to you anymore. Quite frankly, I'm not bothered. We are not going to go. Choose what they do, we are not going to go. I was born in Yorkshire. My husband was born in the village next to Kiverton Park. And I'm not going to be intimidated into moving only when I am ready and my husband is ready. That may be in 3 years. When we're able to sell the house, we could sell it now. But we have had rumours that he's an NCB agent. He has exactly had the same as everyone else, two letters from Mr. McGregor, one from the colliery manager that asked if he'd ring in if he was interested in going back to work, which he did. And he meant what he said. First of all, there was 60-odd men wanted to go back. Then it dropped to 50-odd. And through intimidation, it's now dropped to 7.
All right, very well. Thank you very much indeed for giving us your point of view here on this very windswept hill overlooking Kiverton Park Colliery. Back to you, Sarah.
Well, fighting talk from Mary Haywood there. Betty, doesn't Mary's husband have the right to go to work?
All our husbands have the right to go to work, and all our husbands won't have the right to go to work if we don't win this strike, because a lot of them will be on the dole.
But if too many men are wanting to take their redundancy, men that have given 30 years' service to the mines, the truth of the matter is Arthur Scargill does not want them to have this 30-year golden handshake. There are going to be so many jobs left. There are going to be more men that want their redundancy, Sarah, than there are men wanting to stay.
We should also say that the government and the NCB have said there will be no redundancies.
That's right. Could I say
That's right.
make also the point to this lady that all of us have got sons who are waiting for those jobs, and you have no right to sell them.
In the pit.
You have
Look, you fought years ago. You fought years ago to keep the men from the pit.
There's nowhere else for them to go.
No.
And we are looking to their future.
I would have thought, surely, that everybody in any walk of life, if they have a son or a daughter, would be able to see for themselves that it is that son and that daughter's right to decide for themselves which job they want.
Who agrees with James?
Do mothers have to provide jobs for their sons? My son, I've got 3 sons, has provided himself quite adequately with a job, and he was made sick with diabetes in January. He didn't whinge and whine.
I think, agreeing with a lot of arguments on my side, the point is the NUM, firstly, doesn't just consist of Mr. Scargill. The NUM consists of an executive, right? Right? Now, secondly, I've got to come back to this, but the lady over there said about fighting for jobs and that she doesn't agree with people fighting for the son's judgment. If they didn't do that in 26 and onwards, there would be hardly any jobs now for the people. Thirdly, I've got 4 sons, and I shall be very lucky in the Barnsley area if my sons can get a job.
But nobody seems to have picked up the point that the government and the coal board has said there will be no redundancies.
But there will, Sarah. And the redundancy money, nobody's got a right to sell somebody else's job.
Don't be intimidated by that, it's only a microphone.
Can I just say that I've got 3 teenage sons and they all want a job down the pit. Our pit was up for closure last year. It's the best coal in Nottinghamshire, and there's at least 50 years coal left in that pit. If that pit closes, we've got nothing, a ghost town. That's all we've got. And can I just bring up about the police, the intimidation? We've had intimidation a lot more than the rest of the village that are working. We've got nobody to turn to. The scabs have got the police. We're left completely on our own, and we've had more than what the scabs have had.
Let's go to...
Our husbands aren't scabs. There has not been a proper vote for them to come out and strike, so therefore they're going home. They're going to work.
Lady in the blue suit.
Well, years ago, the parents fought to keep the children out of the pits.
Now, the fighting to get them in. Why? Why?
The bitterness, I said to you earlier on, coming from the south, you don't sense, you don't understand. But the bitterness, how are you ever going to live together again?
Well, we can live with them. Could I just answer the question?
No, can you answer that question? Is that bitterness now so much in your blood and in your bones that you will never, never survive?
It will be the Scargill lives.
I've got a letter.
Let's hear from this lady.
There's a lady, an elder lady, has sent a donation into the moderate miners' back to work campaign. And she clearly says, I am distressed to see my England ruled by highly paid thugs, highly paid by the Soviet. Yes. Well, of course, we are reaching a point now where we have a lot of fascists then. The fascism of the far left. We thought...
Let's have this answered by a striking miner's wife. Who's going to answer that?
Well, if the lady would make her mind up whether we're going to be ruled by fascists or whether we're going to be ruled by Soviets, I think they're two entirely different things. But do you mind, with respect, I listen to you. With respect...
Girls, yes.
They're two completely different things, aren't they? I mean, do you really believe, does anybody really believe that... I can only speak for Yorkshire. 55,000 men are that stupid. They would do something that they don't really want to do. I've got a husband who's a miner. I have two sons who are miners. And my God, woe betide the day I say to them, go back to work, because the mother will be out on the streets.
Can I put to you two questions? I'll tell you what they are, first of all, for a show of hands. How many of you think that this is a politically motivated strike by Arthur Scargill? And then how many think Mrs. Thatcher is to blame? How many think that Arthur Scargill is politically motivating this strike and it's not about coal? And how many blame Mrs. Thatcher for this strike? That's interesting, isn't it? Jane, do you want to make any comment there?
Yes, I would like to go back originally. If there'd been a ballot, I'm sure none of this strife would be happening today. But could I also bring something else in?
Sure.
6 months into the strike, a strike has never gone on this long before, has it? Now, I'm sure everybody will agree with that. Can anybody honestly say that if this strike continues for another 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, that we're even going to have any pits left?
Absolutely.
To be
11 have gone
about?
already.
Exactly.
11 have gone already.
In fact,
That lady behind there.
Can I just get on to the point that was raised before about this lady? She states that she's ashamed to see her England ruled by thugs. This has never been shown in the press or on the television. I'm ashamed to see policemen beating up women that are standing on picket lines, that are there supporting their husbands. Show this.
I'm in agreement also with Tony, because we're always the people who don't want to who want to go back to work are always described as moderates, as if we are extremists.
Do you feel that you have a bad image?
I feel we've had a very bad image and a very bad exposure by the media and the television, and I think it's time the truth was told about us.
But the television is always being blamed practically for the strike. It's either the police or the television, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
You blame the strike on the police and the television.
I blame the wrong sort of impression of the strike and the striking miners and their wives on the press and media coverage. Our story has really never been told.
Will there ever be peace, Betty, please? Because we're running out of time now.
We are hoping there's going to be peace, but we are certainly strong and solid for the strike. There can only be peace when we are assured that our children will have a future, our husbands will have jobs, and we think about human beings and not money.
Let's end on a... Let's end on a positive note. Well, as the last half hour has demonstrated, the issues in this long-running dispute are still as emotive as ever. 7 times in the past 6 months, the NCB and the NUM have met and broken up acrimoniously. Now, the 8th attempt has foundered as well. Are we all in for a long, hard winter? See you Thursday for the next daytime programme. Thank you both.
Yes, I'll just remind you, Sarah Kennedy will return with another edition of Daytime this Thursday afternoon at 2:30 on YTV.
The number to ring is 01 388 2345. The lines are open now and will remain open until 4 p.m.
after the break, Glendarroch is the setting for a new series of Take the High Road.